Hello and welcome back, and before we start today's review I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about a giveaway I'm doing at the end of the year, this year 2021. At the end of this year I'm going to be giving away some of the items that I've reviewed here on the channel in the last year or two, and if you want to enter or get your hands on some of this stuff, then what I recommend you do is watch this video and look out for the mention of a Christmas movie. I've done this on a few other videos. At the end of the year I'm going to start giving some of the bits and bobs out, but in order to enter, see if you watch this video, spot the Christmas movie in question and then put it down there in the comments. Go down there into the comments and just put down the name of the movie. That is it. And then towards the end of the year, we'll do a random draw and hand out some of those goodies. But as mentioned, whether you're watching this on the video, put it in the comments, or if you're watching this on one of the social platforms over at NAS Compares, you have Facebook, Twitter, or whatever, just put it in the comments of that video, wherever it's linked to. Anywhere else won't count. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you stay tuned for that giveaway. Again, this thing is going to be entered and we're going to mention it later in the video, the TBS464. But for now, let's crack on with the review and find out a little bit more about this TS-364. And there we have it, the second entry into the QNAP 64 series of devices. It is a new prosumer kind of SMB, small medium business range of desktop devices, the 64 series. Again, we've already talked about one unit prior to this. The very first release for that series was this, the TBS464, an NVMe equipped Intel Celeron system, and this one is incredibly niche, and unsurprisingly this range continues with its niche topic. We're not really seeing many of the mainline 2s and 4s and 6-bay devices yet. I think they're going to eke into 2022 realistically, but this is the second device here. This is a 3-bay NAS. Now I know a number of you immediately go, what now? 3 bays, that's absolutely right. 3 bays is a strange number indeed, isn't it? For years and years and years, we've got used to the idea of having these kind of defined standalone storage systems in DAS or NAS with RAID capabilities to protect our data and improve performance, and they've always gone the same way. 1 bay, 2 bay, 4 bay, 6 bay, 8 bay. But suddenly, in the last few years, QNAP kind of looked at that and went and pushed a 3 bay into the middle. This is, I believe, the third iteration of their 3 bay series. The 3 bay series that have come before them always have seemingly arrived close but no cigar in a number of ways. They've either prioritised the external connectivity and then given internal, hardware to low-end ARMs, or they've given some great internal capabilities and fairly rubbish external capabilities. But in this new iteration, they've kind of really balanced things out, worked out all the gremlins, that sort of thing, and figured out where they should really sit there in the middle. And with this, the TS-364, which is a hard drive and SSD equipped system, this 3 bay, which honestly is more of a 5 bay once we crack down into it, is a very interesting NAS. For those of you that look at 2 bays and go, well, in a RAID 1 I'm going to lose all my storage, where's the future proofing? Or you've looked at 4 bays and bigger and gone, I don't need that much. This one sits beautifully in the middle while still giving you a good level of internal hardware. Is it perfect? No. The design choices are a little bit shonky for me, and in some ways it's really boosted things over its predecessors, but there's a couple of really weird design choices throughout the way in terms of its hardware architecture that I still query a little bit. Now, in terms of price point, at the time of making this video, I can't really find a solid online price. I know I could reach out to QNAP and get the RRP, but the problem with RRPs, or recommended retail prices, is they're never really true, are they? They're always kind of, they're putting the price there and it's never that high realistically. So looking around at different places that have had listing and stockists for this, the price tag in pounds at least sits at around 3 to 350 nicker. Given that 2 bays knock around for about 250 and 4 bays knock around for about 550, that 350, maybe even an edge in closer to 400 is probably the most realistic price point there. But no doubt when you're watching this now, the price point a few weeks down the line is going to be a lot more solid. So I'm going to stick an EST estimated or TBC somewhere in the description there. But this 3 bay NAS arriving in quite similar kind of retail packaging to what you've seen before. Let's have a look inside. I should highlight, I'm not going to talk a great deal or show off much of the software capabilities. I've done a huge review of the software for this and other QNAP devices in the QTS5 kind of supported bracket of devices. I've also got a 9-part guide series that should go live any day now for the QNAP range of devices. So if you want to learn more about the software, although I will talk about it at points throughout this video, I strongly recommend watching my QTS5 review, which should be linked in the description, as well as staying tuned for a lot of those guides on how to make the most of your QNAP NAS. But inside we've got our box of accessories. This is the unboxing portion of the video. Inside we have our UK main sleeve. We have an external power brick there. So this external power brick, it's a 65 watt PSU. And again, it requires a kettle plug. So even though the UK one's in there, it's not going to be tough to replace that. Also inside, we've got our quick start installation guide. And again, mildly useful. Again, there's plenty of assets online. I know a lot of people like to have a paper manual, but I never, I don't use them unless they're particularly extensive, and this one just seems a bit box ticky for my liking. Also information on the warranty. This system arrives with 2 years of warranty, a slight lower than I would have liked to have seen, if I'm honest, given that the 53D series that came out a year and a half ago, that had a 3-year warranty. I'm kind of surprised that this is rolling off the deck with just 2 years warranty off the bat. Also, there's information on extending that warranty. You can get it up to 5 years there. So again, not sure how I feel about that. I think it's all right. It's pretty good. But still, 2 years is a great number. It's just a shame they couldn't settle on 3 like last year. We've got a single LAN cable there. This is a Cat5e cable. Although I will say this is a 2.5 GBE equipped box. So again, this cable is more than sufficient for that. We've also got adhesive heat sinks here for the M2 SSD slots inside that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail later on, as well as kind of screw holders there, pin holders there at the bottom rather than traditional screwdriver screws. Again, you're not really going to need much of a screwdriver for this, something that I'm going to show you later on, but that's really it for the accessories inside this box. So let's get that out of there. I always make a point of highlighting with a lot of particularly server devices, be they small or big. I will definitely judge a device quite strongly on how it is shipped, because these are devices that, although they don't have a lot of moving parts, are quite susceptible to shock damage, motion damage in transit. And given that most of these things are developed in the East and rolled out from there, that's a lot of transit there. And I'm pleased to say that in the case of QNAP, they're still massively protecting these things with that hard foam all the way around. I feel I could punch this and it's going to be absolutely fine there. Let's remove our foam. Again, big old thick bits of foam. Let's have a little look at the device itself. Again, it's quite an unusual shape. This isn't the first time I've talked about the 3-bay NAS series here on the channel, but with this one, a lot of the kind of range of it has gone into length. It's a real, very boxy there on the front, a complete square there on the front of the chassis. When you look at a lot of 4 bays and stuff like that, or even these 2 bays like this one here, this device is the same height as those, but it's the depth of these NASes that really show off the difference. Once again, looking at this standard 2-bay, this is an Acer Store 2-bay here, we can see the height difference there. With this 3-bay device having to factor in a lot more channel trajectory of a lot of that cooling and the way that the hard drive sits inside, something we're going to go into a little bit more detail on later on. But if we go back to the chassis here, we can have a little look at the front. Now, the front of this device, the first thing that will hit you is no trays. There is no hot swapping enabled on this device. The whole system has got an internal installation. You can't hot swap those drives. Even if you delicately try to take it apart, it's just not going to work for you there. Now, cooling on this system, there's no active cooling on the side, and by active, no passive cooling on the sides. The base has a little bit of ventilation there, as you can see, but the majority of the ventilation comes from a fan there on the rear of the device, and quite subtly, we have airflow here all the way along the side panel, but we've also got a vent here at the base. It's not an enormous amount of cooling, I'll grant you, but still, it's nice to have that ventilation. You can once again see that this is a device that is very much based on horizontal airflow with nothing escaping out the sides. Again, we've talked about this before when brands have a tendency to sometimes not put any vents on the side, and a lot of the time some people do worry that that can lead to increased temperatures of the kind of media inside, but not when it's designed to come up with that funnel-based cooling there, something that's quite present on this because they're trying to compact in 3 storage bays of hard drive media and 2 NVMe SSD storage bays there. Now, we've got LEDs here on the front for each of those individual storage media bays inside. On top of that, you've got connected LEDs there that can be dimmed or increased in brightness all the way through for things like system status, network status, activity on all the drive media, power button there on the front, and we've also got a USB one-touch copy button there on the base. Now, for those that aren't aware, one-touch copy buttons for me are a thing that I think all NASes should have. They've been around since NASes first, in this form at least, arrived on the scene more than a decade ago. And the simple idea that I can have a USB drive that I carry for work or for studies or for personal use, that periodically I just connect to my NAS via a simple connection, and then while I go off and make a cup of tea, because I'm British and that's what we do, when I go over there and do something else, I can just physically click that button and then it will start the backup, whether that's the backup of my USB to the NAS or the NAS backing up to the USB. Now, again, I could have done that with the software. I could have done it on my phone and actioned it. I could have done it with the software to automatically trigger that USB backup the minute I connected the USB drive. Those are all things I could have done. But for me, the idea that I can physically action it is the same as not relying on an autosave on a game. It's the same as not relying on automatic background saving when I'm editing videos like this. I need to have a manual option as well for that peace of mind. Now, that USB backup there, it's got diff backups there, so only changes are backed up. You can have individual folders or entire storage area backups. It can be omnidirectional. On top of that, you've also got time managed as well and versioning built in, so you can have different storage images of all of that data that you've backed up, so you can revert to an older one. Again, this can work in either direction as well, and the USB doesn't have to be disconnected either at all times, so you can have a localized backup for the most core important files on the NAS, encrypted if you choose as well, to just click whenever you want to back up or let it happen automatically internally. Also remember that you can set it up that when the USB backup is completed, it will safely remove it internally, so you don't have to log in and safely remove the USB there. It's a small feature, but it's something that I don't understand why it's not on all NASes. It's too useful, and even at the enterprise level, it might be useful 1 or 2 times to back up regular core files to another directory. But that's enough about something as rudimentary as that. Now, if we move away from the front and all that ventilation, the chassis is plastic all the way around. I know a number of you are wondering will you stop hitting this thing. On the base, as mentioned, we've got those rubberized feet all the way along the bottom, and again, a little bit of ventilation there under some of the storage bays. Now, if we have a look at the rear of this device, we can see a little bit of stuff there. We've got that active fan, and again, its RPM, rotations per minute, can be adjusted at any time from within the software. On top of that, we have got a couple more USB ports. What's really interesting, and also at the same time a little disappointing, is those USB ports there. The USB 3.2 Gen 2, which is bang on, get in 10 gigabit connectivity there for our storage media, so way faster than the standard USB 3.2 Gen 1 there on the front. But why are they on the back? They're really useful, and again, USB on QNAP NASes supports a lot of different features and services, from network dongles to 5 GBE upgrades, to add more network ports to 2.5 or 5 gigabit Ethernet to the device, webcams, peripheral devices, keyboard, mice, all kinds of stuff can be connected. But what I want these, or at least one of these, on the front, because when I'm backing up and I want the backup to be lovely and quick, I'm surprised that the most useful USB port is on the back, not on the front, given they've got that touch copy button. It's a small thing, and again, very niche, but I kind of wish that was there on the front there for sheer blind convenience to me. Now, we have a 2.5 GBE port, which I personally love. I love that QNAP is putting 2.5 GBE on pretty much all of their systems. at the same price point as 1 GBE, and no one else, apart from Acer Store of course, is really doing that, which is great to see. There is only one port, which is a bit of a bummer, and a lot of you will remember the TS-332X, which was a 10 GBE 3-bay NAS, which had a fairly shoddy CPU inside. But still, only having one port, bit of a bummer, but at least it's 2.5 GBE there. There's an HDMI port. Again, QNAP has still got HD stations, so you can run a parallel, completely different graphical user interface with a keyboard, mouse, or IR remote control, or the mobile phone remote, Q remote, as well as your smart TV, an HDMI monitor, whatever you want, and therefore use it for surveillance, a virtual machine to turn it into a localized PC with QVM. Then there's high definition media enjoyment, there's music, there's even third-party apps like Skype and Spotify and stuff like that, even YouTube I believe as well as a bunch of homebrew applications on the QNAP Club community that I recommend you check out. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this with the HDMI port, but again, the USB ports, just stick one at the front, just stick that fast one at the front. I'm not wasting a USB 3.2 Gen 2 on a sodding keyboard, I'm not mad. But apart from that, it's still a very, very effective device. Now, I will say, if this is anything like the 3 bays I've tested previously, and I will be doing a noise test on this, by the way, but if this is anything like the 3 bays I've tested before, and going by the spec sheets themselves, the 3 bays actually a lot noisier than I think it would be. It's not like clang, bang, or, really irritating noises, but it does definitely make a little bit of noise there, more than a traditional 2 or even a 4 bay, and a lot of that is to do with that elongated architecture and the way the trays are laid out internally that I'm going to show you in just a moment. Now, if we open this up, so we've got 3 screws here on the rear, and again, even though they are flat-headed there on the top, they are thumb screw based, so we can rotate them just with our hands there. And then we can rotate, remove all 3 screws, and have a good look at those storage media bays inside. Now, the connectivity on this is fairly standard. I can understand that price point being a little bit sweeter there in the middle. It lacks a lot of the more aggressive stuff of the 53D series, so again, no PCIe upgrades, only a single LAN port there, not a 4K HDMI out. But still, I think it's a good level of access and connectivity, while still leveraging a lot of internal hardware advantages as well. So if I remove that side panel there, someone there having a good old drill, we remove that, put that there on the table, you can see the rest of that chassis internally, plastic all the way through, and again, lots of this is to hold that framework of the storage media in place inside. If we pop that there just on the side, and we can have a little look at the inside of this NAS. So again, we've got our 3 hard drive storage bays there, as you can see there on screen. And again, all of them are removable click and load trays. So again, instead of using a screwdriver here, what we can do is use these little pins here on the side, which then pincer the hard drive inside. It's a little bit flimsy. I've got to say, I'm not a huge fan of the design of it there. I think it doesn't feel as sturdy as a lot of the 3.5 inch trays that I've looked at before. Again, this isn't meant to be an enterprise level NAS, so I'm not going to be too hard on the trays. And again, we've far surpassed the point in the last 5, 6, 7 years where these are built in any way where heat or vibration is going to affect them. These are still very rugged drives for their build, but still it just feels a little plasticky there with that plastic there holding that in place. That's not going to be there when you've got the hard drive installed there at the top. And when we do a lot of our software testing on this, we've got some Plex testing and a VM test coming up. It's going to be interesting to see that, if any of the noise, little vibration there when it's in operation is going to be coming from those trays there. And if I remove all 3 of those trays very, very quickly, we can see those 2 bays right there. Those are our NVMe SSD bays there. Now, in terms of storage architecture on this system, let's kind of delve into that a little bit there. Firstly, those 3 bays of hard drive storage, and I say hard drive, they can of course be used for SSDs, although how you put an SSD in that I don't know. These hard drive bays are SATA in architecture. They support up to the latest 20 TB drives from the likes of WD and Seagate there. There's no drive locking, something that Synology have kind of getting a bit of flack for recently. So again, whether you're going to be utilizing, your WD Reds or your Seagate Iron Wolves inside this, still a tremendous amount of storage capability. So with 3 drives in there, even in a RAID 5 environment, you're looking at 40 terabytes of storage there, which is great in a storage system like this. And again, that's still with an extra drive to fall back on. Now, the NVMe bays inside there allow you to install NVMe SSDs much faster than traditional hard drives. And those SSDs can be utilized for caching, where you can leverage their performance to improve the access time to data that would traditionally be on the slower but larger capacity hard drives. That's read and write caching, depending on how you want to proceed. You can also utilize those SSD bays as just standard storage pools, so a lovely fast area of storage there that you can use for your most important data. But do bear in mind, remember, only 2.5 GBE there on the rear. You can utilize it with a system known as Q tier, which is when, instead of like caching, when copies of your data is moved onto the SSD for faster access, or during write operations when data is written to the SSDs first for faster uploads and then moved over to the hard drives. Q tier is when the system analyzes the most frequently accessed data, be it big or small, and then moves the most commonly requested and most important data over to the SSD, and then moves less used data over onto the hard drives, and then slowly swaps data out over time depending on the storage access trends of your active users. So again, Q-tier, incredibly useful. Still annoying that it's not available on the QTS QUTS platform, but it is available on QTS there. On top of that, you can utilize the M2 NVMe slots there inside to be utilized with this, the Coral, the TPU card that Google have been talking about quite a lot. And this is a small module that massively improves AI-assisted operations. So for those that aren't aware, we are going to get around to the video on this. It's just been quite busy. This is the Coral TPU. You can put 1 or 2 of these, 2 seems wildly overkill, into 1 or both of those NVMe slots, and this will improve AI recognition in things like QMAGI for photo recognition. It can also be utilized with a lot of the deep video analysis stuff on the QVR platform as well, with facial recognition and stuff like that. And again, these are dirt cheap. You can pick them up for about 20 quid, 30 if you want some of the snazzy ones, and there's also a USB equivalent one as well. And ultimately, this extra little component here and AI-based support and AI analysis on your data when it comes to searches, be it of the subject kind or just data storage file name kind, is hugely beneficial. And again, this is something we're hoping to see integrated a lot more in private servers like these ones in 2022. So again, that's an option that's available to you there via those M2 slots. But it is worth highlighting, there is a slight downer because of the CPU that we're going to talk about in a bit that's featured inside this device. It's PCI lanes, that's basically all the arms it has to do all of the services and the hardware services equipped to it. In order to maintain that balance and spread things out fairly amongst all the different services on it, those M2 slots are PCIe Gen 3 x 2 each. So if we look at some of the SSDs in the current generation of NAS-based SSDs available on the market, these are PCIe Gen 3 x 4 with a performance, at least in that architecture, of about 3,200 to 3,400 megabytes per second sequential read there. But with these slots, the most you could ever theoretically have is 2,000 because of the Gen 3 x 2 architecture, which is going to be a real bummer for some of you that have got super fast SSDs knocking around that you're going to put inside this and they're going to get slightly bottlenecked. Now bear in mind, 2,000 megs is still absolutely phenomenal to be playing with there. Obviously, 2,000 is a theoretical maximum, and realistically, it's going to be less than that. But you can still RAID them together. You can still utilize that super fast storage internally when you're utilizing it. And there's a lot to be said for what you can use that storage media for internally. And once again, even if they weren't bottlenecked to Gen 3 x 2, bear in mind, you're never going to see that full Gen 3 x 4 connectivity externally on this box. So with the Celeron processor inside that we're going to talk about in a moment, I'm prepared to let those 2 extra slots go because most people buying this device are buying it because it's a 3-bay middle ground NAS between the 2 and the 4-bay. And the fact that it has those 2 NVMe slots inside practically as a bonus, very rarely spoken loudly about, I'm prepared to let that go about the Gen 3 x 2 at this price point and architecture. Now, let's talk about the internal architecture of this device. If you can make it out, let's angle this just right, you can see two things. You can see a big silver heatsink here, and you can see a SODIMM memory module there. So first, let's talk about the big old silver heatsink there. That is what covers the Intel Celeron CPU inside this device. Now, that CPU is the N5105 or N5095 because of Intel CPU refreshes, the pandemic, hardware shortages, and a million other factors that led to Intel refreshing ranges way more frequently than normal. It's going to be a hell of an 18 months for everyone in the NAS world, by the way, in terms of CPUs. That CPU is 2.0 gigahertz in architecture. It's a 4-core CPU that can be burst per core up to 2.9 gigahertz, a lovely jump there. It features a great floating point on there, AES-NI encryption, the far more efficient, power efficient encryption system that still keeps things very, very safe. It's got integrated graphics as well, UHD. So with that, you've got your 4K and 1080p transcoding taken care of, whether that's native transcoding within the box, or you can take advantage of a lot of that transcoding in Plex Media Server. We did run some Plex tests on the same CPU here on the TBS 464. I'm not sure if they're live yet. And again, everything up to heavy 4K stuff, it ran like a dream with virtually no stuff. And I include HDR in that as well. But it was just when we started hitting 4K, the H.264 stuff kind of started maxing the system a bit. And H.265 and 10-bit HDR, no way. But still, nonetheless, that's still a great little architecture CPU to be dealing with there. That CPU also opens the door to DDR4 memory up to 16 gig, and this NAS allows you to do that. It's got the 2 slots inside there, and the 2 slots with it arriving with 4 gig of DDR4 non-ECC by default, so that's SODIMM DDR4 memory inside there, and another free slot which allows you to upgrade the storage media on this device up to a maximum supported 16 gigabytes. So again, we are going to do some memory upgrading on this to see if we can exceed that and whether it's in any way usable, because obviously that's outside of Intel's own supported maximum on that, on the 2 channels there. But still, nonetheless, 16 gig of memory maximum on this new gen CPU, or at least new Celeron gen CPU in this NAS family, is not to be sniffed at. It's twice that of the previous generation of devices in the 5.1 and the 5.3 series, and on top of that, or in the D series, and on top of that, they've not increased the price point from what I can see significantly, or indeed at all in most places, over the previous gen, making it an absolute no-brainer in terms of its architecture. If you're looking at QNAP for a NAS, you're looking at a desktop NAS, and once again, you looked at a 2-bay and thought, yeah, a little small, looked at a 4-bay and went, am I ever going to need that? A 3-bay, and remember, you don't have to fully populate it either, can be quite appealing. By that, what I mean is, you don't have to put 3 drives in this. You don't even have to put the NVMe's in it. If you're going to buy a 2-bay, why not just spring the extra 80 to 100 nicker, which I know is a lot, but scale a little bit back on your storage. If you're going to buy a 2-bay anyway, buy this, only fill 2 bays of storage, and then you've got a 3rd bay that you can add storage to later, and the 2 super fast NVMe slots. Yes, it lacks the PCI upgradability of the 5.1D and 5.3D, but it more than makes up for it with a lot more architecture inside that massively expand what a system like this is capable of. Now, in terms of software, as mentioned, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the software on this device, largely because I've gone into it in a greater degree of detail in previous videos. I will say, looking at this device up close, that when it comes to its support of QTS5, you're largely completely covered. Everything from the standard class file management applications, from File Station, QSearch and QFiling for business. Then on top of that, you've got your tailored multimedia apps, your music station, your photo station, your video station, and of course, QMaggie photo recognition and multimedia console, the single kind of whole system multimedia indexing tool, which never gets the respect it deserves, in my opinion. Those are all things that are possible and included with this to a high degree. On top of that, you've got the likes of Plex Media Server for your multimedia, And of course, when it comes to backup synchronization, you've got Hybrid Backup Sync 3, you have got the Hyper Backup Protector, you have got the likes of cloud management, and of course cloud gateway tools in the form of virtual JBOD and the hybrid mount service. And again, licenses are included with this device. Then you've got surveillance with QVR Pro, QVR Elite, and even USB camera support as well, with 8 camera licenses included with QVR Pro as well, not to be overlooked. And remember, 20-30 quid, improve your AI surveillance stuff for your deep video analysis for photo and thing and car recognition and more. And again, standalone surveillance as well with an HDMI monitor, keyboard and mouse. Boom, you've got remote access and local access too. The software is very, very evolved. It's a lot going on with it, and QTS5 is, you know, the most responsive it's ever been. I'm still not hugely in love with some of the icon sizes. They've improved it vastly since the beta, I'll give them that. But with the exception of that, QTS is probably looking the best it's ever looked so far. Do I like this box? I do. I like what it stands for. I like its architecture. And if I was personally looking at entering the world of QNAP as a prosumer or a business user, and a 2-bay looked too meager, and I was just looking for a little bit more than a 2-bay, this genuinely is a great choice. It's a good architecture, and it's probably the most balanced 3-bay that QNAP have ever produced. Is it perfect? Of course not. First and foremost, it looks like a 70s or 80s bread bin. I don't love the design. I've never liked the design of this 3-bay NAS. That said, you're not going to be looking at it all the time. It's going to be stored away somewhere in your home office and you're never going to see it. So design, at least in terms of aesthetics, isn't really that important. What does matter is cooling. What does matter is ventilation. What does matter is efficiency. And that's something when we have looked at 3-bays in the past, it has performed. It has managed the ventilation. It has kept our storage media cool. Another criticism I would say is the heat sinks that are arriving for those NVMe's inside. Let's bring those back. They seem a little small to me. Now, I dealt with a lot of NVMe's this year. It's been a very NVMe heavy second half of 2021 for those that have followed this channel. And that heatsink for me, that's going to go directly, adhesively onto the controller of the SSD that we install inside, seemed a bit meager. I don't know if you saw when we were inside there, the distance between the hard drives and those NVMe's is exceedingly close. Yes, there's going to be ventilation coming through there, but not a vast amount of ventilation. And these SSDs, when they're in operation, they're going to get quite hot. So I would maybe look into getting a bigger heatsink for those drives. Maybe not relying too much on those mini ones if you go for this device. It's nice they've got them, and at least they've made provisions for heatsinks. I just wish they're a little bit bigger than that. But this has been my full hardware review of this, the TS-364. Again, we've got some software stuff coming up on this, as well as the more detailed and full of photos and graphics and images review over on NAS Compares, linked in the description. That should be live, if not right now, then within the next day or so. If you have enjoyed this video or you found it useful to you, then do click like. It genuinely helps me understand what I'm doing right in these videos and makes each video better than the last. If you want to learn more about this device as more videos come up on it, click subscribe and the bell to be notified. And we're going to be covering a lot of different NAS systems as the new generation of these systems begin to arrive between now and spring 2022. So if you want to stay on the fence there and you're wondering about buying stuff for next year, subscribe, because then you'll learn all the good things that are coming, whether they're released or just in a release window. Lastly, if you are still unsure about what you need for your storage, for your home or business needs, and you're just kind of, there's so much information, use the free advice section over on NAS Compares. Genuinely free, manned by 2 humans, me and Eddie the web guy. We answer the emails that come through there. We don't do anything with your email address. It's yours. We don't want it. There's donate buttons. Use them, ignore them. It's up to you. It's unbiased. If you want to take advantage, it's right there. It might take us next day or so to answer your inquiry because it gets quite a lot of hammering and we have lives, but we try to answer every single one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.